Let me first of all thank the UN and UNESCO for organising this and all those who are participating in this conference. And even if I'm at a distance and seem far away, I feel very close to all those who are advocating universal education, that we should become the first generation in history where every child can go to school. And whenever there's a child who is not at school, forced out of school by early marriage, forced out of school to be in child labour, child trafficked, all these children, they deserve our support, because what they need most of all is the right to an education. Now, I'm going to be very blunt. With 300 million children now not going to school, 800 million children leaving school with no qualifications, with, as we just heard in the eloquent remarks of the World Bank Vice President, 70% of children not meeting learning standards at the age of 11, and 70% in the poorest continents not leaving with anything that can help them with the workforce that they want to enter. We need a fundamental shift. It's got to be radical, it's got to be irreversible, and business as usual does not give us the answers. So I'm proposing far more radical change. First, I agree with David, domestic resource mobilization is absolutely critical. To that is the efficient use of resources when we mobilize resources in each of our countries. The aims are right: 4 to 6% of GDP, 15 to 20% of public spending. Achieving that by, yes, getting taxation and the avoidance of tax tackled in each country. Debt restructuring, I was part of the debt relief that gave 40 countries nearly 200 billion in debt relief in 2005. We need that kind of debt restructuring immediately, and I'm sad that the G7 should have met without agreeing that it was going to make sure that that happened. All these things need to happen. But there is no guarantee that if that happened, the money will go to education. We've got to fight for it. And it will not be enough to deal with the crisis we face now, particularly when 40% of countries we've just heard have been cutting their education budgets. So we need internationally to do far more to help countries spend and invest in education. And we need international action collectively, and that's why we are proposing a global compact for education financing. Now, what does that mean? It means, first of all, what both speakers have said, 15% of aid going to education, but countries honoring their promises on aid, because one by one, countries are reducing aid at the moment, and we've got to fight that. Secondly, and I'll be very blunt about the World Bank, more has got to be spent in IDA on education. It's only 11% at the moment. It should be 15%. We believe that an enhanced IDA that is 125 billion over 3 years, the next cycle, and 15% on education could raise an additional 10 billion of resources for the 200 million children in low-income countries who deserve that support. And that is something that I think we should argue for and agree at the Transforming Education Summit in September. And then the third is, we require a new institution, because nobody has talked here about the financing needs of middle-income countries, lower middle-income countries. Now, that's where the biggest number of out-of-school children now are. That's where the biggest group of refugees and displaced people now are. These are 700 million children in total. Now, the World Bank's facility for middle-income countries provides only 6% of its resources to education. And the reason is that it's structured in such a way that it's more convenient for finance ministers to spend on infrastructure and transport than on educating children. And that's why we need the new facility, which is called IFID, the International Finance Facility for Education. And this morning, the Asian Development Bank made it clear it was going to work through IFID so that it could release 10% of its resources initially to education. And that's what we want every development bank to consider doing. Why is it such a good facility? Because at the moment we deal with loans and grants. These facilities that I'm talking about in any development bank would be built on guarantees. Now, countries can give guarantees without them having to be on their balance sheets in the European Union. And that's why Sweden, that's why the Netherlands, that's why the United Kingdom are preparing to do this. But what it means is there is low-cost finance for lower middle-income countries who are trying to do something on education. And the leverage that is offered is far greater than anything that the World Bank at the moment is able to offer these lower middle-income countries. So I tell you, if we do not agree to a new facility, which has been asked for by the Secretary General of the United Nations in his summary of what he wants out of this conference, then we will lose the chance of what I think is potentially 10 billion of new resources to help the 700 million children that we're talking about.
Thank you.
You know, I've had, and I just want to finish there. I've had all the views from young people in advance of this conference. I want to learn, they keep telling me. I don't want to be out of school, let me learn. I don't want to be a child bride, let me learn. I don't want to be suffering from child labor, let me learn. I want to have a fair chance, let me learn. Now, the one way we can give them a fair chance is honoring the promise that we will deliver this sustainable development goal of quality education for all. And we have got to do it by providing new resources internationally to enable those countries who are struggling to develop and deliver education at the moment. We can be the first generation in history where every child goes to school. We can develop the potential of every child and not just some children, but we've got to do this in September by making the Transforming Education Summit transformational for education itself. Well, it's let children learn, but it's turning words into action. And I would urge every country represented here to say to the Secretary General that they support his proposals to create these new facilities for finance, and we implement a global compact that involves all of us in delivering the education goals we all believe in. We need action, not words.